Welcome to the modern elite. She didn't suddenly change. You may have noticed it. A flicker in her gaze, a hesitation in her voice, a message that comes quicker than expected, or perhaps a lingering thought in her presence that feels almost magnetic. Most men don't notice these small shifts at first. They see the surface actions, a text here, a smile there, an unexpected glance. But what they miss entirely is the undercurrent, the subtle emotional pull that isn't obvious unless you truly know where to look. It starts with confusion. You notice she's acting differently, yet you can't place why. She reaches out when you aren't expecting it, yet withdraws when you think she should. At times, her attention seems relentless, as if she's everywhere you are without even being in the room. You find yourself questioning if you imagined it or if it's real. The human mind tends to rationalize what it cannot immediately understand, and this is where most men lose clarity. They assume inconsistency or uncertainty rather than recognizing an underlying psychological pattern that is both subtle and profound. What's fascinating here is that the signs of obsession are rarely overt. They are rarely spoken aloud. They manifest in layers of emotion and thought that are often hidden even from her. A woman who can't stop thinking about someone is not just texting or calling more often. She's mentally rehearsing interactions, replaying memories, imagining conversations, and evaluating possibilities constantly. This is where most men misunderstand her behavior. They focus on what is visible, the surface layer of action, instead of decoding the psychological pattern beneath. Consider how she reacts to your messages. A simple hey or a short update from you can trigger a cascade of emotional responses within her. She analyzes the tone, the timing, the choice of words. In her mind, she's mapping your emotional availability, trying to predict your next move, and adjusting her behavior accordingly. This is why she might seem distant one moment, intensely present the next. It's not capriciousness, it's a deep engagement with her own feelings and her perception of yours. Then there's the subtle energy she exudes in person. It's hard to define, but it's there. The way her eyes linger slightly longer than normal, the lightness in her voice when she speaks to you, or even the way she mirrors your body language without realizing it. These micro signals are her subconscious revealing the intensity of her focus on you. Most men unfamiliar with these cues write them off as friendliness, charm, or coincidence. Yet these small, almost invisible signs point to a deeper truth. She is thinking about you far more than she lets on. What makes it particularly disorienting is the ambiguity. She is careful, often cautious, never letting her feelings overwhelm her logic in front of you. This balance between deep internal preoccupation and outward composure creates a tension that is both magnetic and confusing. It's a subtle psychological signal, almost invisible, but powerful in its effect. Men often misinterpret this as mixed signals, but what's actually happening beneath the surface is a continuous, almost obsessive focus of her mind on your presence, actions, and emotions. Now, let's explore the psychology behind this behavior obsession. In the context of attraction, it's not about unhealthy fixation in most cases. It's about attention, emotional valuation, and mental prioritization. When a woman can't stop thinking about someone, her brain is actively assigning significant emotional weight to that person. This process engages both conscious evaluation and subconscious mental rehearsal. Her mind is creating scenarios, anticipating responses, and emotionally simulating interactions long before they happen in reality. From a neurological perspective, this engagement involves a combination of emotional and reward circuits. Dopamine, oxytocin, and subtle hormonal responses create what psychologists call a cognitive loop around a person of interest. She experiences bursts of emotional arousal when thinking about you, recalling your words, imagining your reactions. This is why her attention feels persistent, almost inescapable. What's important to note is that this isn't always overt. It doesn't manifest solely in constant communication. Often, it's a quiet, internalized engagement that shapes her moods, her choices, and her social behaviors. Here's where most men misunderstand her. They see actions as the message. In reality, the actions are merely the tip of the iceberg. What's actually happening beneath the surface is a continuous mental preoccupation. She is analyzing your intentions, predicting your feelings, and emotionally rehearsing potential interactions. Every glance, every smile, every word exchanged becomes data in her subconscious mapping of your personality and intentions. You may notice patterns that seem small but are psychologically telling. Perhaps she remembers tiny details you mentioned in passing, or she references experiences that were never deeply discussed. These are not mere attentional quirks. They are evidence that her mind is actively prioritizing you, storing you in her cognitive and emotional map. She's constantly evaluating where she fits in your life and how your life fits with hers. The fascinating part of this dynamic is the subtle control it exerts over your interactions. Without even realizing it, you may feel more conscious, more aware of your behavior around her. This is because her attentiveness triggers a psychological feedback loop. Men often think they are in control, but the hidden pattern here is that her mental focus subtly influences how you perceive her and engage with her. Understanding this requires a shift in perspective. It's not about chasing validation or misinterpreting distance as disinterest. It's about decoding the signs and recognizing the depth of her cognitive investment. She is engaged emotionally, intellectually, and subconsciously, and the visible behaviors you notice are only fragments of a larger psychological picture. This is why learning to read her cues accurately is transformative. Once you see her mental patterns, you realize that what seemed inconsistent is actually consistent at a deeper psychological level. Her mind is active, focused, and persistent. The mystery dissolves, and what remains is a profound understanding of why she behaves the way she does. Now let's examine the hidden patterns in her behavior. These are subtle, often overlooked, yet deeply revealing signs that she is thinking about you constantly. The first pattern is anticipatory engagement. She tends to preempt your needs or questions, sometimes before you voice them. This is her mind simulating your behavior in advance, a subconscious way of maintaining closeness even when you're not physically present. The second pattern is selective responsiveness. She may not reply immediately to everything, but her responses are deliberate and meaningful. She prioritizes interactions that carry emotional weight rather than filling time with casual chatter. This is a psychological hallmark of focus: quality over quantity, precision over randomness. The third pattern is emotional mirroring. When you experience joy, frustration, or tension, she reflects it subtly. Her expressions, tone, or even posture may unconsciously match yours. This is more than empathy. It's an intimate cognitive alignment that demonstrates her mind is constantly attuned to yours. Fourth, she engages in mental rehearsal. She imagines potential scenarios, your reactions, and the outcomes of conversations. These rehearsals influence her subtle choices, what she says, when she texts, or how she presents herself around you. Most men miss this entirely because it rarely manifests as overt behavior, yet it's a strong indicator of ongoing preoccupation. The fifth pattern is recall precision. She remembers details that others forget, integrating them into conversations in a way that feels almost intuitive. This signals a deep cognitive mapping of your personality, habits, and preferences. It's her mind keeping a constant record, shaping her internal narrative about you and your connection. Together, these patterns create a consistent psychological profile. She is thinking about you more than you realize, not as a casual thought, but as a structured, persistent focus. This is where most men misinterpret behaviors as mixed signals. They are observing fragments without understanding the cohesive mental framework that drives them. Recognizing these patterns allows for clarity. Once you see the underlying structure of her attention, her actions become predictable, not mechanical, but patterned. You start to differentiate between surface behaviors and internal cognitive focus, which is the true indicator of her obsession. This understanding transforms interactions. You no longer chase inconsistency or feel unsettled by unpredictability. You see that her mind is engaged, her focus is deliberate, and her attention is not random. This is the secret framework behind her behaviors, often invisible to the casual observer, but crystal clear once you know where to look. So why do men often misread this? The primary reason is expectation versus reality. Many men focus on what she does externally, expecting it to match a linear model of attraction. A delayed text or a reserved demeanor is interpreted as disinterest, while intense engagement is seen as sudden obsession. You're focusing on what she does instead of why she does it. Here's a mindset shift that is essential. Her behavior is a mirror of her internal engagement, not an external scoreboard. Mixed signals are rarely what they appear. They are reflections of her nuanced emotional processing. She balances desire with caution, attention with discernment, and emotional investment with self-protection. Understanding this dichotomy allows you to respond with awareness rather than reaction. Another common misunderstanding is projection. Men often project their own patterns of thought onto her. They assume that because they would act differently, she must feel differently. This is where miscommunication arises. Her obsession does not manifest in the same ways a man's focus might. It is quieter, layered, and cognitively sophisticated. The key is perspective alignment. By shifting from reactive interpretation to analytical observation, you begin to decode the true meaning behind her actions. You recognize that her mind is active, that her attention is selective, and that her patterns are structured. This awareness changes your emotional response. You no longer chase, no longer misinterpret, and no longer doubt. Instead, you see the psychological reality. She is invested mentally and emotionally. This mindset shift also enhances your interactions. You respond from a place of understanding rather than confusion. You engage with intention, knowing which signals carry weight and which are peripheral. The emotional clarity gained here is subtle but transformative, reshaping how you perceive her focus and how you engage with her presence. By learning to observe, interpret, and respect the structure of her attention, you gain both insight and agency. The relationship dynamic shifts not through manipulation but through awareness. This is the difference between guessing and understanding. And once this clarity is achieved, you experience a level of psychological resonance that transforms every interaction. Finally, let's bring this full circle with clarity and control. Recognizing the signs of her focus is the first step. The second is understanding the psychological truth. She is thinking about you constantly, even when she is silent, distant, or seemingly distracted. This is not coincidence, nor is it random attention. It is a deliberate cognitive preoccupation rooted in attraction, emotional evaluation, and subconscious engagement. From here, control is not about forcing outcomes. It's about aligning your perception with reality. Emotional control emerges when you understand the depth of her attention and allow it to inform your responses without anxiety or overanalysis. The power lies in observation, not reaction. The clarity comes from seeing her patterns consistently rather than interpreting isolated actions as signals of uncertainty. The emotional conclusion is profound. Once you internalize these patterns, you no longer feel confused by her actions. You realize that what once seemed unpredictable is actually highly structured. Her attention, thought, and subtle signals are aligned around you, often in ways that are invisible to casual observers. You begin to see her not as a puzzle, but as a mind that is deeply engaged, focused, and emotionally attentive. This realization fosters calm confidence. You no longer chase inconsistencies or doubt your influence. You simply understand the psychological reality. She cannot stop thinking about you, and this shapes her behaviors, words, and presence in ways that are deliberate, persistent, and meaningful. So, as you move forward, let this awareness guide your interactions. Respect the focus she has placed on you. Decode her patterns and engage with both clarity and emotional intelligence. This is the key to navigating attraction, obsession, and connection on a deeper, psychologically informed level. If this made you see things differently, subscribe, because understanding her mind changes